Hey, sweeties. I'm going to talk today about politics again. I've been seeing a lot of conflict on the net between, let's say, a really strong group of, seems like mostly MTF, male to female, transsexual activists, and I have had some run-ins as a transgender or genderqueer with activists, with MTF activists, about certain theories which are taken as dogma, it seems like, in the activist community, which I have a lot of trouble with. And this started during Pride, when I went to trans events, and I've been really struggling with it. So, what is it, a month later maybe? I've been reading some stuff, educating myself about really where the fault lines are between an anti-essentialist like myself and these women who seem to really take a hardcore essentialist biological view of what transsexuality means. So I found a very, very interesting article on Wikipedia today, which really illuminated a lot for me. And before that, I'd been reading sites like Questioning Transphobia, and a huge controversy on Pam's Blend. And I'm kind of thinking that this group, which is organized around Questioning Transphobia and a couple of other sites, mostly adherents of Julia Serrano's Whipping Girl and the views that she propounds in there. I was troubled by a lot of it. I was troubled by the way they throw around cissexual as a term of derision, as a term of hate. Especially since in their scheme of things, I would be a cissexual. They have the trans thing. I'm a cissexual because I don't take hormones, and I don't do medical interventions. And so, I resent that. I resent anyone calling me a cissexual, as the othering me, and not having trans credentials, whatever. But to get back to it, I don't want this to be too long. The Wikipedia article was a critique of the feminine essence narrative. And, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, you got it. It turns out to be this group around Bailey and Blanchard. They have they're sexologists. They have some theories that I'm not sure are completely accurate, but their critiques of the feminine essence theory or feminine essence narrative are really great. It's great to see somebody besides myself putting this into words. Somebody that, can say I'm trans so I can critique it, whereas I think a lot of people who aren't trans are uncomfortable with these theories, but, they don't feel they have the right to talk about it. Well, I do. I have the right to talk about it, because they're talking about me too. So, other words for it are, like brain sex theory. So it's this theory that there is something called a feminine essence, and again, I'm talking about MTFs right now, because that seems to be more where I see this politics. I'm not educated about how FTM politics deal with this. But, so it's this idea that there is an essence, that transsexuals are born with this essence, a feminine essence, that MTF transsexuals are born with a feminine essence in a male body. It goes back to this whole woman soul in a man's body, which originally was supposed to be about gay men back in 1890, I believe. So it's this narrative which has been going through our culture for, 120 years now. And, the latest proponents are talking about brain sex. There were a few experiments on dissections of MTF brains in Holland, which seem to say, oh, these brains are the same as women's brains. That theory's been kind of debunked because I think Zhao was the lead researcher on those studies. He said that hormone therapy could not account for this difference, and other researchers have pretty good evidence. I find it convincing in any case that hormones are actually the cause of these differences. And one of the main things also is these differences between the brains, which are supposed to cause transsexuality, don't manifest until adulthood. So, all the young transsexuals can't have this brain difference. They don't have the brain difference. So it's not a very good causal explanation. But so back to my critique. So the brain sex, you also hear talking about true transsexuals versus, and they're very derogatory sometimes about cross-dressers or fetishes, or, that they have a true biological, intersex condition, and the rest of us are all deviants and perverts. I'm not saying everybody says that, but you do see that on the far right of this group. There's not on questioning transphobia, but on, I think there's this blog called Taking Up Space, and that you really do see that, and some of the more fringe groups. They have a theory called HBS, Harry Benjamin syndrome. It seems to have originated on the blogosphere, and this is this idea that there's an intersex condition which transsexuals have, which is that they have a female brain. And unfortunately, this theory is culturally dominant. And, it makes sense because science started propounding this theory about gay men back, more than 100 years ago. And you see it in documentaries, you see it, all over, this idea of women's brain in man's body. So there are repercussions to this theory, which I find, have a very negative impact on me personally. And everyone else who is a social constructionist. The repercussions of the theory is people insist that the MTFs insist they were never men, that they were always women, and so that means that they deny that they have a history as a man that they can learn from and share. So that's denial of a history. It's a denial of having anything whatsoever to do with males like me, who are feminine, and it's also a claim of having had the same history as women, which gets them into a lot of conflict with feminist groups and certainly radical feminists. And another thing that was brought to my attention is the other thing is I feel, because I culturally transitioned to being a woman, right? Cross-dressing in public, basically. I feel like there were opportunities for me to learn, how to identify as a woman and to get women to treat me as a woman. So I wasn't demanding it. I wasn't saying, I have this intersex condition or I have hormones, you have to treat me like a woman. Well, while they're saying, isn't that very male of you to say that? Instead, I had the freedom to kind of tease it out and work it out. I got a lot of shit too, don't get me wrong. But I think, when you barge in and say, I've had these hormones, you have to treat me like a woman, and you can, there's no such thing as cultural differences, and you can't, that you're being transphobic if you say that I'm any different than you. You're just creating conflict. So that, and anyone who doesn't accept this narrative is transphobic. So this leads to conflicts with both the feminist essentialists, who they actually agree with. They both agree there's a feminine essence, and the feminist essentialists say, oh, it's genitalia, and the trans feminist essentialists say, oh, it's not genitalia, it's brain sex. But it also leads to a non-acceptance from those of us feminists who are anti-essentialists, is you're insisting that we accept an essentialist narrative of sex and gender. And it's not going to happen, sorry. You know, that's your narrative, it's not my narrative.